If you've ever wondered what a strip softbox is and how to use one, we're going to cover that in today's video. Today we're going to discuss several creative uses for a strip softbox in a portrait lighting scenario. We're going to start off by covering what a strip softbox is and how to put one together for use in your lighting setup. And then we're going to go over a few different ways that you can use a strip softbox for various lighting effects. I think this is a really exciting topic because strip softboxes are extremely versatile lighting modifiers, and they can be surprisingly affordable too. I recommend having at least one or two of these softboxes on hand because they are really good creative tools for all kinds of portraiture. And by the way, this type of modifier is often called a strip box or a strip light or some variation of any of these terms. But we're going to call it a strip softbox for this video. All right, so a strip softbox is a narrow rectangular softbox. It's ideal for accent lighting such as rim or kicker lighting. It'll give you dramatic effects for bodyscapes and figure work, and it can function as a key light. It's also effective as a background light to add depth and separation. Now, the main components of the strip softbox include an internal frame or rods, and sometimes these are called tension rods, and these are going to maintain the shape of the softbox. Then we've got the speed ring, which attaches the softbox to the light's mount or to a mounting bracket. And we've got an internal baffle, which helps improve light dispersion within the softbox before it even exits through the main front panel. And the front panel is what provides even diffuse light for the subject. Optionally, there's a grid accessory, which lots of times these are fabric grids that Velcro to the front of the softbox, and this helps direct and focus the light. All right, let's talk about how to put one of these strip softbox modifiers together and connect it to a flash or a strobe. Now, in this case, I'm going to be using a Godox strip softbox measuring approximately 14 by 63 inches or 35 by 160 centimeters. So here are the softbox tension rods. Now, there are 4 of them, and they're the same on each end with this kit. You've got the speed ring here, and this is a Bowens mount version. Now, there are different types of speed rings made to fit different types of flash or strobe mounts, but the Bowens style is very popular right now, and that's what I'm using. The speed ring has holes for the tension rods, and this is the interior baffle that attaches to the inside of the box with little spring clips. The baffle looks similar to the front diffuser panel, but it's smaller. And this front face diffuser is the front panel. It attaches to the lip of the softbox with strips of hook and loop fasteners, or what we often call Velcro. And you can see inside the softbox is a reflective silver material, which again helps sort of intensify and spread the light around. Now, there are also some loops along the 4 creases inside the box where the rods go. And you can see here I stick the rod through this loop and I use this elastic loop here for connecting the inner baffle. One end of the rod gets inserted into its pocket on the edge of the box. And I'll just repeat this with the other 3 rods. All 4 ends of the rods meet in the middle of the softbox, and this is where we insert the rods into the holes on the speed ring. And here's the inside of the box. Now, after we've got everything set up, we've got the rods and the speed ring all connected. Now it's time to set up the inner baffle, which helps spread the light around the box more evenly. And the baffle just connects here to the elastic loops in the box with these little clips. You can see I'm not having a really easy time with them. They're really small, but eventually I get everything hooked up, and once the inner baffle is secured, it's time to place the outer diffusion panel. And again, this sticks to the front with Velcro-like material on the lip of the box. I'm placing it near the inner edge, which creates a recessed edge to the box, and it also gives me room to attach the optional grid if I want to. And that attaches pretty much the same way. Now, you can use a strobe or a speed light as your light source, and I'm going to use a speed light here with a Bowens compatible S-type adapter to connect the speed ring. This knob right here can be loosened or tightened to help control the position of the softbox, when you've got everything else set up exactly the way you want it. And this all just mounts to a light stand, just like you'd expect. And of course, you can do the same thing with a larger strobe. Now, this strobe has the Bowens type connector built in, and it's got a built-in swivel, so we don't need an extra adapter like we do with the speed light. Hey, if you're new to off-camera lighting, you can check out my free guide that'll teach you how to put together your own off-camera flash setup. It's called the 10-Minute Guide to Off-Camera Flash, and it'll get you on the fast track to taking amazing portraits with your flash. This free bonus bundle also includes the very handy camera bag checklist, photo shoot notebook sheets, and a couple of model release templates that I use for my portrait shoots. You can get all of this for free right now by clicking the link in the video description below. Traditionally, a strip softbox is used where a narrow light is handy, like for rim lighting, which we're going to talk about later. A round softbox, like an octabox or other types of modifiers like an umbrella, These are usually what we use for a key light. Now the key light, as you probably know, is your primary portrait light. And lots of times we want to use something wider than a stripped softbox for our key light. If you like a nice round catch light in your subject's eyes, you can achieve that with a rounder softbox for the key light. In this illustration, I'm showing the stripped softbox in a normal placement, about 45 degrees to one side of our subject and slightly above her head, pointed down a little, but I'm also tilting the light for effect. So here's what that would look like from behind the subject. I recently used this technique in the studio to demonstrate how a stripped softbox can easily fill in for a traditional softbox when the key light is needed. In this case, I'm using a Godox AD600 Pro strobe, and the Godox stripped softbox is mounted directly to the strobe's Bowens connector on the front. All right, and here's an image created using this setup. Note the shadow pattern and the quality of the contrast. And remember, changing the angle and orientation of the softbox is going to produce different results. So like I said, it's very versatile, and with a little experimentation, you can come up with a look that you really like. Here's a simple placement that's kind of like a narrow butterfly light. And here I've got the light high and centered this time to create an effect like this. And you can place another light or reflector below the subject's face when you've got the light set up like this for more of a clamshell lighting scenario. As with any key light, you're going to want to start off with camera settings that are going to work well for the portrait that you're trying to create. For indoor studio work, we might want to use an aperture setting in the f4 or even the f8 range. So for this example, let's start with our camera settings at ISO 100. Our shutter speed is going to be 1/250th of a second, or whatever your camera's normal flash sync speed is. And we're going to use f8 so that we can keep our subject in focus from front to back. So now that your preferred camera settings are set, you're going to want to place your key light, in this case the stripped softbox, and try a power setting that seems reasonable. So let's say that you try a power setting of 1/8 power. Take a test shot, and if the light's too bright, decrease the power to say 1/16. And if it's too dim, increase the power to 1/4 power, and then test again. And just keep doing this until the light looks right. You can experiment with the angle of the softbox and the subject's pose to find the look that you like. And once you're zeroed in on the right combination of light, placement, angle, and general pose, just go ahead and take a series of shots. Probably the most typical use of a stripped softbox would be as a rim or a kicker light. Essentially a rim and kicker, just really the same thing, but by different names. And the purpose of a light like this is to highlight the contours or edges of one or both sides of your subject. If you're highlighting both sides, that would normally be done with 2 stripped softboxes. Now in this illustration, we've got our key light, which is a standard round softbox doing its thing, and our stripped softbox is located to the rear and one side of our subject pointing at her from that position. When we use our key light on camera left, it creates a shadow on the right. And if the background's dark, the subject can tend to visually fade off on that side. So I like to place a kicker on the side opposite the key so that our subject gets the benefit of a highlight on the shadow side. And this helps add depth and dimension and visually separates or kicks the subject off the background and away from the shadows, hence the term kicker. You can see how this makes a big difference with a darker background, like I mentioned before. Here's an example of using this technique in the studio. Now, as you can see, we wouldn't necessarily lose the subject in the shadows on the right because the background here isn't really very dark, but the highlight does add that extra crisp edge, which gives the image a little pop. Notice I'm not using a grid on the stripped softbox in this demonstration. Now in this other shot, we just placed the key on camera right and the kicker on camera left, and this time I am using a grid. A grid can make a difference in certain situations, but with something like this, you'd pretty much get the same result with or without the grid. As for settings, after you've locked in the settings for the portrait, as far as the subject and the key light goes, you can bring in your rim or kicker light, place it where you want it, and try out a power setting that gives you a light intensity about double the power of the key light and see how that goes. And just take a test shot, and if the light looks too bright, dial the kicker light's power down. If the highlight against your subject isn't bright enough, increase the power of that light, or bring the light in a little closer to the subject. Because stripped softboxes provide a controlled narrow light source, they're great for highlighting contours as we've just demonstrated. And this turns out to be perfect for bodyscape photography and certain types of figure work. Now, bodyscapes are images that often look like some type of alien terrain or landscape, But what they really are abstract images that feature parts of the human form. And all this might fit into the traditional definition of what bodyscape photography is, but some photographers use the term a little more broadly, so you might see images that are more recognizable as human figures, but still labeled bodyscapes. And that's why I'm going to group bodyscapes and figure photography together here. So the way to create an image like this, where the subject is isolated in space in a low-key image, or one where there's a lot of shadow and very specific areas of detail, we're usually going to start off with a dark background. And our strip box, especially with a grid attached, is perfect for directing light across one side of our subject without the light spilling over towards the background or anywhere else into the environment. For the most part, we want to position our softbox in either a horizontal or vertical position, and this depends on how you want to light your subject and what you want the effect to be. So if I'm posing my subject horizontally, I might want to set up my light like this. And we can do this with some type of boom arm or even just a regular light stand and tilt the softbox down. Now, if you're worried about capturing part of the light stand when doing it like this, it's not really a problem because that part of the image will likely be so underexposed it'll fade off into darkness. And you can also make sure that it goes away in post, either by just increasing the contrast, darkening the shadows, or cloning it out of the image altogether. Sometimes it's easier to do bodyscapes with the model just standing, and in this case, you can just stand your strip softbox up next to her. And this way, there's no need for a boom, and you won't have to deal with the light stand in the background. Then when you get this into post, you can just rotate the image 90 degrees to get the horizontal bodyscape image. One neat effect is to use the horizontal orientation of the softbox, but with your subject either standing or sitting. And you could get some really interesting figures this way because the light reaches so far around to each side of the subject. If she's standing centered under the softbox, she's going to receive light around her left and right edges at the same time. We can also do this with two softboxes, one on either side, if you want even more coverage from top to bottom of a full-length figure. For the settings, let's start off with our camera settings. ISO 100, shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, or whatever your camera's normal flash sync speed is. And we're going to continue with f8 to get some good detail in our shots. We want good skin texture and sharpness for these pictures. After placing your light into position, the power setting on your light is all you really have to concern yourself with. Now keep in mind that the correct power setting is going to depend on the camera settings we've already decided to use. It's going to depend on the model of softbox you're using and the distance from the softbox to the subject. And of course, it's going to depend on the type and power of flash or strobe that you're using. So you won't necessarily know what power setting to use until you do some test shots. But you can start by trying out a power setting like 1/2 power. Take a test shot and see what that gives you. If it's too intense, lower the power setting. If it's not strong enough, increase your power setting. Take your test shots and keep doing this until you like what you see. Finally, let's talk about using a strip softbox as a dedicated background light. And what's cool about this type of softbox is the way that it can create an almost linear type of gradient pattern of light across a flat background. With something like this, your subject and key light are already set up and your exposure is locked in so that the subject is properly exposed, and hopefully the background is either being shielded from the key light or it's far enough away so that the key light isn't having too much of an effect on the background. That way you can light the background independently with another light, in this case a strip softbox, and you can place it low or high or to one side for different gradient effects. Start with a key light and subject at some distance from the background, maybe 6 feet or more. Make sure that in your test shots the subject is properly exposed, but the background is either very underexposed or dark. Here my camera settings are ISO 100 at 1/250th of a second for the shutter, and I'm at f8. Of course, the power setting on your key light should be appropriate for those settings to create a good exposure on the subject. Next, we're going to bring in the strip softbox, position it for the type of gradient pattern that you'd like to create, and try out a power setting of, say, 1/2 power. Take a test shot, increase or decrease the power setting on the background light until you're happy with the way that the background looks. And that's how it works. You set the power setting on your key light and your background light is set up and you're ready to go. All right, so let's take a look at a few examples of images created with the techniques that we talked about. Now for the strip softbox as a key light, I've got some examples I shot with a mannequin to help demonstrate how differences in the angle and placement of the strip softbox can affect the lighting in general. And I'd say the strip softbox makes for a good key light, but I'd stick with it for slightly more dramatic effects, and I'd stick with the round softbox as a key light for most of my portraits. Now, when I've needed a kicker light, I've used everything from bare flash to umbrellas for kicker lighting, but I think I'd prefer a strip softbox, especially with a grid attached as a rim or kicker light. I mean, it just makes sense because the light itself is so compact and it's set up to illuminate the length of the subject from top to bottom without throwing a lot of light from side to side. You're not actually getting a perfectly rectangular light throw out of one of these. I'd say it's more of an oval shaped light throw. But as a kicker, it's still a lot better than a big round light that's going to spill light all over the place. So today we've discussed the versatility of the strip softbox for portrait photography. We've covered what a strip softbox is, what its components are, and how to put one together. And then we talked about several ways to use a strip softbox, including as a key light, as a rim or kicker light, as a bodyscape and figure photography light, and as a background light. So if you don't already have a strip softbox in your kit, now is a great time to pick one up and start experimenting with it. Again, don't forget to download my free 10-minute guide to off-camera flash, which includes several useful bonuses. And you can get all of this for free right now by clicking the link in the video description below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Hey guys, that's about all I've got for you today. I'll see you next time.